he will. It just looks so powerful.
I mean, there is no way to remove at least the 8-8, right? If at least there was something
Sure.
to kill the 8-8, it might feel better, but if you get greedy, then you just taunt up.
Whatever he's
I
going
mean,
to do.
you just hope that the opponent doesn't have any burn to follow this up with. Well, that's 13 damage.
That's just got to be game.
With
Fireball,
Frostbolt, Ice Lance?
Ice Lance,
Yeah, we're
yes.
talking about the GG right there.
26 damage and way too greedy there from Shy. It's hard to know how greedy it is because we can see the hand and we know very clearly there was a massive amount of overkill here. But it did feel a little greedy.
Well,
leaving up 13 damage on board is asking for trouble.
The life tap is the greedy portion of this because
Yes.
Forgotten Torch and Frostbolt were both playable alongside Fireball. So if you go Fireball, Frostbolt, Fireball, Torch, the win was there on the board.
Yep.
And life tapping put you exactly in the range of that card. If you wanted to play around that exact combo and leave yourself some breathing room for Reno, all you had to do is not tap. He can't kill you unless he's got Frostbolt, Ice Lance, Fireball.
And then you can consider yourself
Reno
unlucky.
on the following turn. Yeah, exactly. And then you can say the odds were really bad of that occurring. And I just feel, like the play was very safe. But Shy deemed the risk worthwhile and ended up getting punished by Xixo's all-in. Xixo saw the burn and said, you know what, I just have to commit. I've just got to commit to a face strategy here and end the game as fast as I can, and he did.
Yeah, he spots those. I mean, all of these players we saw yesterday playing a very different game where he ground people down with mid-range, but all these players spot those sort of chances so well, and Shy there just overlooking that possibility. Why is my opponent making an 8-8 right now? Isn't this a bit early? So Shy is going to have to go 2-0 with his Rogue and with his Reno lock.
Yeah, he's got the Reno lock and the Rogue afterwards. That he's got to win with. So Xixo is going to have the Shaman again. One of the matchups that definitely you don't want to be facing as Reno lock, as a lot of the stuff that is played bypasses the taunts that you have. Like in the later game, the amount of burn, especially in the Jade decks with Jade Lightning, gives them 2 Lava Bursts, 2 Bolts, 2 Jade Lightnings. That's a ton of phase damage. That's 26 damage you just can't mitigate. Discounted, not even accounting for spell damage totem in that case.
Xixo choosing not to use Finley there and instead, just wants to use this good hero power that Shaman has. There's a lot of debate about Finley. It feels that you kind of have to play it because a 1-3 deals so well with Pirates, but the actual battle cry is more of a downside than an upside a lot of the time, so it's really hard to manipulate Finley to do what you want him to do. Yeah,
I think, though, against a deck like Warlock, you've got Life Tap, you've got, what's the name, the Steady Shot from Hunter, that is going to be just as good. So you've got 2 really good hero powers, and you've got about 3 that are just good. You've got the Druid, the Fire Blast, and in some cases the Rogue hero power, if it doesn't...
From time to time,
go over your weapon count, so...
Yeah, Shapeshift can be good. Okay, so nice little board here. Xixo not panicking. This is something that all of the top players do. Just realizing they've got more time than it feels like. You're playing an aggro deck. Just make sure you do fundamentals right. Make sure that value's okay without messing up your tempo.
Yeah, it's a bit of an interesting turn. The Coin Corruption is trying to get rid of the Tunnel Trog, or at least force it to be traded away, so that there's no such thing as a Lava Burst, on the 4-5, followed by a 4-3 Trog connecting the face repeatedly, and then putting you on the back foot because Demon Wrath is not enough, Shadow Bolt is too slow, so we want to make sure that Trog gets dealt with.
Yeah, and this is another awkward turn. Like, you want to sacrifice the Trog into the 4-5 because it's dead anyway. You might as well get the 2 damage, but then how do you do the 3? You don't want to waste your Lightning Bolt and overload again.
Weapon Hero Power seems okay.
Yeah, Weapon Hero Power seems like it sets up your next turn. You only push 2 damage to face, but you clear the way, and you don't waste any mana, you don't overload, you keep the 5 in hand from the Lava Burst, you keep the Lightning Bolt in hand. I think that's okay.
Yeah, you do take a bit of damage, but that's usually irrelevant in the matchup. So in this case, what's going to happen is he gets to redevelop the weapon right now, which if he plays a Jura Drake in the list, which we've seen more aggro Shamans play nowadays, gives him the opportunity to maybe draw that into a buff on the Spirit Claws to get good trades on the follow-up minions.
Yeah, and if your opponent's messing around with Swampoos or something like that, then good luck to them. You just need to spend you're still an aggro deck. An aggro deck does have to spend all of his mana very efficiently. It's one of the key points.
Well, the Jade Lightning is going to be combined very effectively with the hero power, so summoning a 2-2 in that spot. Now, Demon Wrath is looking, better and better as this board expands. No need for Hellfire at this spot. We're still very early.
But cards like Aya now, the other Jade Lightning, maybe another weapon, They're just starting to become a little bit menacing now you get to the 3-3-4-4 coming up in the future.
Yeah, we got a Leroy Jenkins, not quite the type of card you want to be getting in a spot like this one. Dirty Rat is nice, but ultimately a little bit on the slow end. And now, Xixo is about to drop the pain. If you didn't play Hellfire, then did you really have it? Would you have played Hellfire over Demon Wrath in that spot? Very often to squeeze in the life tap, you don't. So there's still no 100% read that there's a Hellfire. But after you see Corruption on your Trog, you have to assume Hellfire is probably not on that board.
So do you Dirty Rat into Shadow Flame here? The danger with that is you don't really want to bring out a 0 mana 7/7.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, Dirty Rat Faceless Shambler seems more stable, as it does give you 2/6s overall, because you're not going to get a Giant for cheap, followed by a Shambler. This might be one of your better taunts. It softens up the board for Mistress of Mixture Shadow Flame with a life tap on the following turn. So you can squeeze in some extra health gain alongside the final board clear after you've softened up everything.
Xixo is so close to lethal here, by the way. He's like 3 damage off lethal.
Side effects? No.
So plenty of top deck, so any sort of greed, yeah, just not going to be greedy. You've just been bitten once. He's just going to clear this up.
That's
a little bit
interesting.
scared because it's an overreaction to the previous game, I feel.
So he decided to order this and start with the Shadow Flame on the Mistress of Mixtures instead of Dirty Rat into Faceless Shambler. Probably the fear of a 4 mana 7/7 kept him in check. That's got to be the big reasoning there.
So Xixo has 17 damage available to him. Mortal Coil, a fantastic draw here. Going to obviously clear up the board and basically keep all of his mana. Let's see what he gets.
Ooh, Kazakus could give him the 1 mana 3 damage potion or the 2 damage to everything. However, I don't think that's what you're looking for at this stage.
Makes the read on the Dirty Rat because the last turn was kind of a nothing turn. Oh, what a fun deck.
I mean, there is not enough mana for Polymorph Potion, but you can always Shambler the Kazakus in a spot like this one and get yourself 1 taunt minion, which if there isn't any Bolt, the 7/7 can't connect. You could still find Reno. There's still a possibility. We're not done. 5 mana Potion with Polymorph or some form of freeze effect would do it. Double freeze is really good. Polymorph is great.
Yeah, he's not even sure he wants a 5 or a 10. He's on 8 mana at the moment, I believe.
Yeah, I think you're going
he's on 8 mana. So if he takes the 10, he's got to wait. He's gone for the 5. There's a sheep there. There's also freeze 2.
Freeze 2 is the safest one to guarantee there is control being dealt, but
and deal 4 damage to
Polymorph
everything.
is also solid. Yeah, I like the Polymorph quite a bit, but because you assume the wolf dies in a spot like this one.
Is that lethal? 9.
Not quite.
Yeah, it's lethal.
Oh yeah, with the wolf. Sorry, I thought the bolt
Just
went phase. You're right.
exact
Exact
lethal.
lethal with the wolf being used up. Misordered the trade. That is going to be it. Xixo takes it 3-1 over Shy. Against the Reno Log, the Miracle Rogue not doing what they have to. Against playing these 2 highly aggressive decks in the Pirate Warrior and Aggro Shaman leaves your opponent with no ban that feels very good in the current environment, where they ban the worst offender of the 2, but the other one goes through and still does his job.
Yeah, it's a good lineup when everybody's bringing anti-pirates.
Yeah.
And your pirates get banned.
Yeah,
You know your lineup's good when they're banning out the deck they came to counter.
Right, and you see your Aggro Shaman just going through in the end. So
Yeah.
it just makes sense. Miracle Rogue doesn't get removed. Reno Mage still does its job no matter what. And we see a lot of the Reno Mage builds being a little bit on the control. They're trying to control decks and beat other Reno Mages at their own game, and Reno Logs that get brought to the event. So we see a lot of variance in the way those are built. And I feel like Xixo's lineup just overall was very solid. He took a lot of really solid lines of play in spots where it looked like there was nothing to do.
Right, he looks like especially in the Mage Mirror, which he actually lost, but in that game he did a lot of things like playing that Alex Straza early. He knows he can't win the value game with Elise and all the other stuff going on there. So his opponent had already done the Kazakus, he'd lost his own Reno, so he just went for it, and even though he lost that game, he got himself into a spot where his opponent had to play correctly, and then he did the same thing against the Warlock, and his opponent did make the slip up, and he's like, punish you, you lose.
He let the opponent overcommit to agreements who are playing greedy decks, like Reno Mage, for instance. That explains the ban on the Pirate Warrior, as that is a deck that would have rolled over, most of the lineup of Shy, where it just starts off super powerfully. Beats the Rogue, will usually get way ahead of the Reno Log. Higher levels, it's not always true. I mean, I hear that at higher levels, Reno Log has even according to some people, a slight edge, which is odd, but
yeah, I've heard other people say that as well. I'm not on board with that yet, but good players saying things you've got to keep your wits about you. Interesting though that Xixo, one of the reasons he's regarded as one of the top players in the world isn't just his playing skill, but he seems to always get the meta on the right level. He's brought Pirate Warrior.
Yeah.
Almost everybody brought decks that were brought to beat Pirate Warrior, and he predicted this, and he's just gone, I'm just going to bring Pirate Warrior and next level everybody as always.
Yeah, I feel like Xixo's just good at figuring out the metagame pockets that he's trying to target. Sometimes in the past there have been some issues with that where the metagame calls were a little bit off, but in general, very solid player as far as reading the meta. And we're getting the Reno Mage mirror match where, value prevails. Yep. And we'll see whether or not, one of these players is running the...
They're both bringing Inkmeister.
Well, one of the questions, like Kabbalist Dome in there, we have a lot of lists that differ in some ways. Some people consider those cards a bit too slow for some of the matchups they're trying to target.
Interesting. I think both players are probably bringing fairly greedy things. That's if you're bringing the Inkmaster, you tend to go at the greediest end. But like you said, I haven't got the exact list in front of me, unfortunately. But they're definitely bringing... They're on the greedier end, on the rage end of it as well with the freeze. So interesting to see exactly how this pans out. Like you said, it's just going to be a value matchup. And do not underestimate Shy. He won the Time Major earlier in the year. And that major had a lot of the very best players in all of Southeast Asia in that event.
Yeah, the new meta game, though, is still something that we need to see results come out of, right? There's a lot of players that... they've had amazing results in the past meta games, but now this is a new one, and decks come up that you might have not practiced with, to the extent that you have with other decks in the past. And Reno Mage is one of those decks where people have had time to practice since the deck came out and the expansion came out, but it's still somewhat new, and the nuances might be lost. Like we saw the match prior where the Reno Mage was just not piloted as well as it should have been against something like a Warrior.
And it wasn't even built particularly well. It had the
build was fine, but
you just didn't have a way of getting Kazakas back in your deck, which is making it so much harder against the Warrior.
Right, but I think the most important part is it's a new deck, and people are still struggling to get the nuances right. And maybe that will play a factor in the matchup, especially in the mirror match where everybody knows you want the value from Kazakus. You want to ideally get the brand Kazakus into Manic Soulcaster, get the maximum possible potion count as you can.
Yep.
But oftentimes it's
getting an extra 40 mana into your deck in a match tends to be pretty handy.
What's worse about it too is in many cases this is the type of matchup that unless Kazakus potions create huge swings, you'll find that the card count will get awfully low.
Right.
By the end of the game. Hence, shuffling extra copies of things is also very valuable.
Another issue they might have with these builds is they're not very minion heavy, so at some point, I don't think it's as bad as like Control Warrior mirrors, but we might see people just dump a card out of their hand every now and again.
Yeah, it's possible. Now, one of the big things to keep in mind is the Alex Straza we see in Xixo's hand. One of the reasons that card is often played alongside Inkmaster Solia is when you have an inclusion of, say, Pyroblast. You'll have a spot where you have, Forgotten Torch being played in the mid game. You shuffle Roaring Torch into your deck, and then late game, you go Inkmaster Solia, play Pyroblast for free, and then Roaring Torch for the extra 3 mana for 6. After Alex Straza's been played, after the Reno's been played, it's exactly 16 damage, which kills them from the Alex count. So it's a big setup, but it is one that you try to set up if you have the Pyroblast in your deck alongside the Inkmaster.
And as you've already said, you go deep into your deck in this matchup anyway, so that is a thing that you can do. Obviously, you've got to proc the secrets and things out of the way first, but that is definitely something that will come up. Like, these things aren't just pipe dreams. You're going to draw probably all of your deck a lot of the time here, if not 27, 28 cards. And the same goes on the other side, like you said a moment ago, with Brand, Kazakus, and putting it back in the deck. Just 10 mana again, so you can do all these things.
If there's no Dirty Rat disaster, oftentimes Kazakus is just your ticket to victory. Dirty Rat can put a bit of a...
Yeah, the timing is so important. You've got to get the feel for when your opponent, you've got a good chance of hitting the Kazakus or the Bran or the Soulcaster.
I mean, do you just do it now? He has drawn, 2 extra cards from the Acolyte. Feels kind of early,
but
look at going to turn 7, there could be the Kazakus Brand being played, and suddenly you'd never get the value.
But now he can go Dirty Rat into Flame Strike with his reduced casting costs next turn. If he wants to go for it, it's a much better setup now, especially this turn is just going to be a whole lot of stuff trying to clear up the board.
Yeah. Now, Brand Kazakus is, it just can't be played on the board with an Emperor as you have to answer it. So there could be, an early Flame Strike or the Fireball Ping trade.
So Dirty Rat into Flame Strike and Holy Smite on this side looks like it clears nearly everything in your opponent's deck. The only question is whether he wants to be greedier than that, but we may see him just YOLO it and see what happens.
I mean, there's an awful lot of AoE in Xixo's hand, and Shy isn't going to be playing too many minions for the entire game.
Right.
That's one of the things that just doesn't tend to happen very often. So the amount of, between the Frost Nova and the Blizzard and the Flame Strike, you're going to have to dump one of them at some point and hopefully hit, 1 to 2 minions, and it's sufficient to, justify the value. And now we see one of these turns where Ink Master can be used for purposes just, get a bit of tempo, clean up some of the board,
so
and
giving
not
up on
give
the
the
stuff you were
initiative
saying.
back to the opponent.
Finance Portal going to get perfect value here. Finance Portal such a tempo swing, like the Ink Master was the other turn.
Okay, get a 3-5 with Wind Fury. Not the best, but I mean, right now it does require an answer as well, because that's 6 damage a turn coming in.
Yeah, and it's just trading back and forth at the moment. None of these things are really going to swing the game. It's all about trying to set up this Kazakus without losing it. So you want to get as much of that combo in hand as possible without losing it. And yeah, Shy here not waiting for the Soul Cast and deciding, you know what, this is getting awkward. I don't want to lose it to Dirty Rat. Let's just make sure we can do something with this.
Yeah, and you can always get other targets from Dirty Rat. It doesn't really matter what you shuffle as long as you shuffle something. Like getting an extra Archmage is amazing. In the case of a Reno Jackson, that can also be great. You don't need to get Kazakus. That's the ideal scenario, but it is not the mandatory thing. And another card in the matchup that's super interesting is Doomsayer. You don't want to play Doomsayer because of Dirty Rat. It just feels very scary in the mirror match. Any Reno deck that has Doomsayer and Dirty Rat is going to scare you away from playing it. So you need to find a spot where you've got nothing to lose and you don't really care about losing what it is you play.
And a lot of the time as well, you get back the 3 minions with the potion. You don't want to get back a Doomsayer and just blow your board to pieces either. So card you've got to play very carefully. But it's still a powerful card. It's a card you want to play, just not yet.
All right, Xixo is going to try to milk all the value he can out of that Firelands Portal minion, which is working out quite nicely. And he's trying to set up a very aggressive finish here, as he realizes, well, my opponent's got 2 potions. I am so far behind right now.
Yeah, he's got nothing in his hand that's really going to generate any action in the foreseeable future. So just go to try and go for the cheesy victory.
I mean, he does have the Archmage, and he has the Holy Smite for free. He gets to also slap in a Frost Nova on top of that, so he gets 2 Fireballs, which helps set up a lethal over a few turns. Oh my god, the Reno's gone.
The Reno is not going to be so rich today. Not like 100% a disaster with Reno, but definitely not pleasant.
It's not what you want to see, but it's not a complete nightmare, because you didn't anticipate to need the Reno all that much, given that you're trying to close out the game as the aggressor here if you're a 6-0. But it is still a card you'd rather have as an option. Yeah,
you've got to be just so much more careful now. And yeah, continuing what you said a minute ago, just continuing with this line of, I think I'm behind, I'm just going to keep firing stuff at you and see if I can get away with it.
And it's working. I mean, the Holy Smite does set up a world in which double Fireball ping pops the block at exactly 1. And so he gets to just ping after that. If there's no armor gain from the potions, if there's no Reno, no healing.
And Shy has no Reno, no healing at this point, unless the potions have it. We can't pick those up very easily at the moment because of the way that the stream works, but he doesn't have much going on. And even if there's healing, it's only going to be a bit of armor, maybe 8 armor or 10 armor at most, sorry. And that can be dealt with. It's just if he picks up Reno, if Shy picks up Reno, he could still get out of this.
Yeah, the Polymorph here, Heaven Sent card, honestly, to deal with that Archmage. Has a Fireball to deal with the Alexstrasza, so it's at the point where if this is a 10 armor card potion, then he's waiting for the block to be popped and preparing for it. Doesn't have much choice. He knows his opponent is going to get that pop. Now it's just a matter of surviving after that fact. So finding the Reno Jackson, finding some healing on the back of this, because it's still a lot of pressure coming through.
And he's done well not to panic. I think a lot of players here would have just thrown out the Loot Hoarder and tried to hunt for Reno. just because you're in danger of this block going, but he doesn't want to give it away to Xixo that he hasn't got it. If he does that panic play and starts fighting the Reno, he tells Xixo, yep, go ahead, proc the block.
Yeah.
Waste all these resources.
I mean, I think it might have still been correct to play the Loot Hoarder. It's hard to say, but it depends on how much you expect your opponent to commit to this. Well, that's a card you wanted to see before you played Dirty Rat.
Yeah, now.
Awkward.
So choosing not to proc the block here because of the threat of Reno, because, like I say, Shy didn't panic. Had he played that Loot Hoarder, Xixo would have had the go-ahead to just smash him in the face. And instead, he's having to play a slightly more measured game.
Yeah, Xixo making the hand read that the opponent doesn't really seem stressed out.
Yep, and that's Shy's good play that's done that.
Yeah.
A lot of lower down players would have just started panicking, and Xixo would have made the read. He hasn't got the Reno and just been able to win this game. Getting his own block set up. Always looking for a turn like this to set your block up. It's 3 mana you never want to spend, so you kind of wait until you're forced to spend it.
So he chose to ping here and set his opponent at 12, which is interesting to me
I
because
thought that
very
too.
often you will find that the double fireball ping is a clean way to pop the block at 1, whereas now the block is going to be popped at 6 and you don't have the follow-up fireball. But it might not be an issue if his plan is not to use the fireballs for burn and instead play the game for board control. You know, he didn't see any big potion come out, anything crazy that's going to completely blow him out of the water. So he's thinking maybe I can play the board control game with this AoE, with these 2 fireballs, get my double Kazakus play myself, maybe splash in a Soulcaster on top of that, and get my own value play.
Now he's got to think whether Flame Strike will ever be better than it is right now. This is a pretty sad Flame Strike, but your opponent's down to 4 cards. You know 2 of those are potions. The potions could easily fetch minions back, but on the other side of that, it's not going to get huge amounts of value this game one way or the other.
Yeah, I really like the, keeping the Flame Strike for that moment, as you mentioned, where the potions probably resurrect minions. Like, that's the scary part. And you've got the Volcanic Potion, you've got the Blizzard, you've got the Flame Strike. So even if these potions also buff the minion's health count, which tends to happen often if you pick up the, that option as a first one, it just kind of makes sense to bring the extra health on top of it.
This is going to be interesting. I was thinking that if the Archmage came down, Xixo would have been able to make the read that there's no Reno, because that's the only card that's been in hand. But the Reno's been picked up. It could have been interesting that the Archmage was there, Xixo would get the read that there was no Reno, and then he could have gone all in, put the block, and then Reno would have been played because it's been picked up off the top, which would have been amusing to me. It would have hurt.
It would have hurt a little bit to just make the good hand read that there's no Reno in the hand.
Yeah, exactly.
And then find yourself top decked.
Yeah, that would have been really sad.
Yeah,
I'd have loved it.
But some people like you just are soulless creatures.
Soulless and dead inside. That's me. Xixo just happy to use these fireballs up to control the board. He's happy that he's getting decent value from them, just tidying up good minions. He's got the Flame Strike for those potions, as you pointed out, and he feels that he's okay here, I think. He's not panicked at all, just keeping the value coming.
Yeah, and we see Shy's Pyroblast in hand. He did use Ink Master very early in the match, so with the whole, Alex Straza into Ink Master Pyroblast Torch is not really going to pan out, and the amount of card draw he's been given wasn't quite enough to get to that point, but it is still a tool that's going to help him close out the game at some stage.
All right, so Xixo setting up for Blizzard next turn. I'm not sure what he thinks is going to come down, but obviously he doesn't mind. If something comes down now, he can Blizzard this lot. That's a bit unfortunate, though. He has to deal with this immediately, obviously.
I mean, the scary part is that right now Shy does use the Archmage to buff it with the extra 4 health on the potion, as we mentioned earlier, and he gets to also swing a Fireball totally at the Xixo's face with the spell damage on top of the 5. So, very scary spot. You have to deal with a 5/11, and you've got nothing but AoE damage.
That is 1 mana short?
He can use the Frostbolt Fireball with the Volcanic Potion, and that would clean out the Archmage.
That's fine, yeah. And he has to do that, otherwise he's just going to lose this game. He's just going to have a look at ordering about other cards, though.
I mean, you could play Babbling Book first for good measure, if you wanted.
Yeah, I think he probably will. He's got to reach the conclusion that he's definitely doing that clear, which surely he is. And if he reaches that conclusion, he will play the Babbling Book just to see what comes up.
You might just find the Polymorph. The good old Babbling Book.
That would never happen. That would be just terrifying.
No, that happens.
Okay. Yeah.
I've seen it happen.
It might have happened once.
Yeah, but once or twice.
Yeah. It might be a thing.
I remember that big dragon guy.
Big dragon guy. Yeah. Yeah, that was awkward. All right, so
he's going to opt for a ping here, I believe, on one of the other minions to set up the Flame Strike.
Yep.
Probably on the Drake at this stage to make it 4.
Yeah, that worked out well. He took his time to work it out because he needs the 2 mana next turn, in his opinion. And yeah, just that draw there has just bailed him out. And Shy's well-prepared plans, just shot down. But use a lot of Xixo's resources here.
Yeah, and speaking of resources, the amount of burn that Shy is sitting on in his hand right now, Fireball, Frostbolt, with the Blood Mage Thalnos, and he's got the Pyroblast as well as Polymorph Boar for an emergency, 4 damage to face.
And Xixo lost his Reno. It was fished out by that dirty rat, so he is starting to face down a lot of trouble here. He's going to need maybe his own Alex Straza to boost his own health total back up.
All right, there's a Brand Kazakis, but you're gonna have to address this board first, I believe. You might play Inkmaster Solia, and then maybe the Babbling Book plus Blizzard. That would stall.
Yeah, he's got a lot of trouble. He just got a lot of trouble here. And how does he make it so he survives more than 2 or 3 turns?
I think it's really down to the Inkmaster, being on the board, forcing some removal away from your, maybe your face in terms of burn, and then you get to develop Brand Kazakis, maybe pick up a cheap potion, get yourself a big play. Or you could go Brand Kazakis now, let the block be popped, and then play a 0-cost 10-mana potion off the Inkmaster.
And just hope that there's armor and clearance, and maybe the minions on the board do it. But he's going to go for the Inkmaster play.
Seems ambitious to really pray for the, because your block is lost if you make that play.
If he's blizzarding here, is he tempted to play the Brand so that next turn he can Kazakas and use the 5-mana spells? Maybe he feels he's that desperate he wants to do something like that. Don't think he will.
I mean, I actually like the reasoning, but I feel like it's a bit...
yeah, it's just too ambitious
much
with the hand your opponent must have.
Yeah. And now there is definitely a block being popped this turn.
That's an Elise, by the way.
Yeah?
That's pretty greedy.
Well, is it greedy? Like, if you look at Medivh versus Elise, right? How greedy is it?
Sure,
Right?
you
That's the
come down on...
question.
I mean, part of the attraction of the Water Elemental is just that it's a 3/6 body that happens to have a great ability, but it's a 3/6 body that's the hard bit a lot of the time. So yeah, she's not far off, and she has an ability that can win mirror matches, sure.
Yeah.
I'm good. That's also another reason why Xixo will have been going a little bit crazy early on with Alex Straza and such. Like, he probably feels that he can't win the long value game against Elise and all this other stuff going on.
And he's not wrong.
And he's not wrong, exactly.
So now I feel like the only line open to you is some Kazaka's Hail Mary with 3 damage, 1-cost spells that give you 4 armor. You could technically get an extra 8 armor here with 3 damage twice, so you can kill 2 minions.
Yeah, interesting that he didn't go for the Babbling Book for the double first. He goes just for these 1-drops. Obviously, there's nothing he can get in his eyes from the Babbling Book that's going to win him the game.
So now he's down to another 1-cost spell. Hopefully the +4 armor needs to show up. That's what Xixo's banking on at this stage.
Yeah, no armor there, though. Random minion, get Mal'Ganis.
He's got 4 armor from the Stone Scale Oil on the far left, but that's not going to be enough to survive a Pyroblast.
Actually, I'm surprised he didn't go for Demon there because Jiraxis and Mal'Ganis are both some sort of...
Mal'Ganis is not in
oh,
standard.
it's gone?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Mal'Ganis is way gone.
Hey, it's
Otherwise,
only like a year ago. Yeah, but okay, so just Jiraxis,
Yeah.
sadly.
Jiraxis would have been helpful, though. You're right, maybe that was an option to consider.
Wow. Why have I gone into Mal'Ganis mode? I feel like I've gone into a time warp. Okay, and yep, just going to finish the job now with a massive 10 to the face. And Shy takes a 1-0 lead. He's 4-0 in games today.
Yeah, I'll say something, though, about this. I love watching Reno Mage builds because we've seen all sorts of variants in the event, and the Pyroblast showing up here from Shy is just amazing. Like, Talion, from what I hear, had a similar build. Impact, as well, was running the Pyroblast Inkmaster Solia build, and it gives you so much reach in a metagame that where you can afford it. If you expect the metagame to be slower, it just makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
and like you say, all the different builds making the difference. Shy adding in that Elise just to go that extra step. We saw... was it Talion? No, it was Noria added the Medivh.
The Medivh.
So everyone's looking for that way to be that little bit more greedy without going over the top. And they're all finding their own cards. Xixo's just playing the more basic version, if you like.
Yeah, I think Xixo might have had a Pyroblast in the deck as well. I haven't seen the list. Yeah. But just in general, it's the big difference between, getting the Archmage package. Some people run no Archmage and still the Pyroblast, relying on Alex Straza solely to get there, which is a bit, of an all-in. And you have the other versions that do tend to run the Solia with Pyroblast, Archmage, and some people would just prefer Medivh over Archmage for pure value plays.
I'm tempted to let you cast this one on your own. Rogue Mirror Match.
Why?
It's just a hearty, good old Hearthstone.
Well, I'm going to tell you,
2014 match. I'm sure you're absolutely really good at.
The one of the big problems is someone has patches in their opening hand, and they might just have to shove on the Edwin.
do you just do this? I mean, you're going to make an early Edwin here with this double coin. And do you think that... How many cards did Xixo keep? That's important. Did he keep Pillager backstab? Did he have those?
Yeah, he did.
So...
I mean, he wouldn't keep Sap,
people
right?
tend... Well, that's what people say.
Yeah.
I think that there will come a point where people start keeping Sap in this mirror for this reason, because everyone says you don't. And therefore you keep it and you win.
Okay. All right, so the one time...
Somebody somewhere is going to just catch... Oh, anyway. Somebody somewhere is going to catch somebody by keeping a Sap in this mirror match.
I mean, I guess there's an argument, too, for waiting for Edwin where you go patches, coin, Edwin on turn 2 instead of waiting and playing patches turn 1. The fact that he kept the patches indicates to me that he's considering it.
Preparation as well. Let's see how all in he chooses to go here.
I mean, with the Gadsden Auctioneer in hand, I wouldn't even fault him for just standing back and waiting. But no Eviscerate, no SI play to make the backstab, worthwhile in a spot like this. No Blood Mage Thanos to buffer up the damage it would deal with a dagger to kill a Tomb Pillager. So you're basically down to going all in. And the Sap was played before it even had an option.
Xixo just hovering that Sap straight over the board. He was his opponent's turn pretty much.
Back to the hand with you.
And I mean... There might be people criticising that play there, but Xixo kept 2 of those 3 cards in his opener, so the chances were very slim that Sap was about, because people do not keep Sap in this matchup at this time.
Yeah.
And now this is going to work out really so well for Xixo. He's going to have backstab into Tomb Pillager, into Azure Drake, the perfect looking curve, and Shy is going to be restricted to hanging on until turn 6, really. I hope this Auctioneer can get him out of it, but he might be dead by then, or effectively dead.
I mean, there's a lot of pressure. This could be a crazy draw. If something like an Eviscerate comes up, a Deadly Poison, something needs to happen. Patient Assassin, unfortunately, just a 1-1 that dies to Fan of Knives.
Yeah, and this is just perfect for Xixo. Like, the Assassin's a good card to have on the board. It stops your opponent making that giant Van Cleave, that giant questing. But like you say, there's a card in Xixo's hand that is just perfect for the situation.
I mean, there's also
he may
an
not even
argument
go for it. Now there's just questing into conceal.
I was going to mention, there's a good argument for simply waiting to use the fan, given that you get a free questing conceal this turn.
And you have Leroy on your hand. I mean, you've got to start doing damage counting here, because you're going to put your opponent to 24, and you're going to have a 5-4 and a concealed 3-3 with Leroy in hand. That's representing another 15 or so next turn already.
Yeah, Xixo looking great here. I mean, if there hadn't been the Sap, Shy would have undoubtedly just dealt way too much damage to Xixo for this to feel good. But in this spot...
Pulls a Deadly Poison. All he needs now is to pull a Blade Flurry, and he's fine.
Oh, man. If he had, though.
If he had. Maybe somebody will pull Sacrificial. Let's not even go there.
But like, if he gets Jaraxxus from some random effect...
We've done the Sacrificial Pact one. I'm going to mention it every cast as well, because...
I still can't believe that happened.
It's just unbelievable. For those who don't know what we were talking about yesterday, the Rogue beat the Warlock with Sacrificial Pact into Jaraxxus. That's a thing that actually happened in a competitive tournament.
So Shy here is considering playing Deadly here, not for the card draw with Gadget's hand 1 turn later, but for the +2/+2 on Edwin. I mean, I don't mind it. It's a very heads-up play. And the question is, do I really have time to go for the card draw engine on Gadget's hand? Like, how good is that going to really be in a spot like this one? On the flip side, if I play Edwin as a 6/6 on the back of Deadly Poison, if he has Fan of Knives, I lose my entire board and Edwin to the Tomb Pillager, so what have I really done?
Yep. So he is choosing to take his time. Seems correct. It's going to be very, very painful for him, though, but what can you do? Sometimes you just got to play the cards you're dealt and hope they're good enough.
Seems like there's a freeze on the client. Spectator mode is glitching, so we're going to have to restart spectator mode, but we definitely have the game ongoing.
Yeah, we saw the questing and the Tomb Pillager attack there. We can see Xixo re-daggering, and that will hit the end turn button, I'm pretty sure. I know, attacking with face. So that would be another 11 damage, so Shy would be down to about 12 or 13. There we see it, and that's the board state.
And the board state is not looking very good. Again, Shy deciding to keep the Gadsden Auctioneer prior, hoping that maybe getting a preparation play would make something happen. It's not looking very likely, though.
Yeah, by not very likely, I think you mean, whoops, he's just going to die.
Well, there's a Sap, though, so that's going to buy him, an extra turn.
Okay, so I'll go with not very likely.
Against the questing. And if he picks up, another preparation on the back of the Sap for the Eviscerate play.
Another Sap?
Not
no
quite.
Prep, though. So near.
Yeah, and there's the Leroy in hand for Xixo. We know that much. So the damage is simply going to be enough for the lethal. So Xixo will get another Good push here with the Leroy Jenkins.
So, Shy... Are these guys playing... They're not playing on their own accounts, right? They're playing on pre-made accounts. Because when Shy submitted his deck list, he's got no gold cards. When he submitted his deck list, he has 137,000 dust.
Yeah, that's probably Blizzard lending some dust over to someone.
So, yeah,
I'm going to take a chance here and
dust.
say Blizzard China definitely gave people an account custom made for the tournament purposes, because a lot of people here just don't have the accounts for China.
Right.
Right? You do need to play on the China region for the the connection to be stable.
Which is a totally separate branch of Blizzard. They
Yeah.
have several different rules in place that we don't get in the West.
Like a tournament mode, for instance, like an external client for tournaments.
A number you can type in that brings up the deck list.
Yeah, something
That's
like that.
So beautiful.
Shy is going to have to replay his Miracle Rogue right here. Xixo locked it, but there's a Reno Mage left. Again, Reno Mage versus Miracle Rogue is an interesting matchup because there's been some debate as to who has the edge.
Yep.
And a lot of the time, you would think that, oh, the Rogue just has it. It's good against Reno decks. On the flip side, when testing was run on those, on those edges, I think Mage won 75% of the games.
It was crazy. It was like 11 games to 3 or something.
Yeah.
And I still feel that it's close, but I commented on it yesterday in one of the matches and said I thought it was close. And Orange found me after the cast and said, great cast, but you're wrong. Mage is favoured. I'm like, okay. And he said, you're going to see something later. And then he banned it. He didn't play the matchup for us to show us what we were going to see.
Thanks, Orange.
Thanks, Orange. Yeah, thanks for that, man. Just keeping us hanging for later in the week.
Gotta wait for the real matchups to happen. Now, there's an Ooze. I didn't see if Shy kept the Ooze in his opening hand. I don't think so, right? I think it was just found.
Yeah, I think it was just... I didn't see a Medivh. I didn't get every card noted down, but I didn't see a Medivh, and I think I would have spotted it because we cast Medivh yesterday, and it seemed a little bit cumbersome.
Yeah, Nerio was the only player of the event, I believe, who brought Medivh to the table.
And he won the group?
Did well. Never really got to see Medivh in action on our side, but it's a card that, when paired with Firelance Portal and Flame Strike, definitely puts in a ton of work.
Lots of burn in Xixo's hands. Going to give him some interesting options here because... So D2 is of the opinion that Warlock has closed the gap completely on Mage now, and that the Warlock is almost favoured or possibly favoured. But I feel that when you've got Pyroblast and Fireballs against a Reno lock, that you're probably favoured as the Mage still.
Yeah, I feel like the Mage has a bit of an edge, but again, it depends on what type of decks we're talking about, right? There's a huge philosophy of combo versus, grindy Warlock decks, and the combo decks, although more explosive, tend to run into Ice Block, heads on, and that's bad. That's kind of difficult to handle.
And that's one of the traps that people are falling into when discussing the meta. We're used to saying, oh, such and such, Rogue beats Priest. But these days you have to say, well, which Rogue, which Priest, which tech cards,
exactly.
Okay, we know there's 28 cards the same, but is he running this card? And suddenly you can't just generalize about matchups anymore.
Yeah, people draw so many cards on average in those Reno decks that it's really down to the text.
Yeah. Yeah, we just can't. We can't cheat as casters like we used to and just learn a cheat sheet. We have to actually use our brains now, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Stone Scale Oil is an extra bit of armor, more pressure from Nether Bloom. Gold Thorn is a really good play after, if you bring back minions, if you've already seen Twisting Nether. Very powerful
Heart
play.
of Fire must be tempting here, same as King's, but I think Heart of Fire for 9 damage.
I mean, it's 8 baseline, and with spell damage you can bump it up to 9, but yeah, it is probably one of the best
Buff your
things
minions,
you can do.
kill their big guy that they make, their giant, something like that, and put them in a real spot later on. Later on being not that far away.
Yeah, it actually goes by really quick given how little pressure is coming in from the Warlock player. So if you have Heart of Fire, you have Pyroblast in hand, you have the Fireball, you have an Ice Lance. Surely with a Frostbolt.
If you can force a Reno down.
Yeah.
It's only turn 4 and already Xixo's getting a pretty intimidating board, but he's going to run out of steam for a turn or two going into the next turn. He's run out of minions, he's going to need to top deck. Water Elemental, something like that would be lovely for him right now. Shy, on the other hand, has a hand full of minions starting next turn. So, although it looks at the moment like Xixo's got control of the board, this might switch around in a hurry over the next couple of turns.
Yeah, do you expect to see the like a Doomsayer here? Or because the Dirty Rats are so afraid that you think we
find this spot for the Earthen Ring, just get a couple of medium-sized minions and challenge your opponent to have an answer.
Yeah, I think the fear again of Dirty Rat is very real. Like
This is
Doomsayer
true.
is really tough.
Yeah, this is true. Dirty Rat's becoming such an intricate card to play with and play around. You have to take your chance. The better people get at playing around it, the more you're going to have to take the chance early to try and catch something before they just fill their hand with minions.
I mean, there's something to be said, too, about how underrated the card was when it was first announced. I feel like it was the most underappreciated card of the set, as it seemed like just a bad taunt, when in fact it was meant as a tech card.
I think what happened is, as Hearthstone players, we do generalize, and everybody went, oh, it's just Deathlord. Now, how does it compare to Deathlord? Nobody really looked at the card in a fresh light. It's so hard to do when you get a new card. You instinctively compare to other things. And so everyone compared to Deathlord and said, well, it's all right. And nobody really massively spotted the secondary use, which is actually the primary use of, oh, I can cheat.
Of it now.